What secret is Damon hiding as he trains with Casey? And will their heated arguments lead to more than just physical combat? Find out in this thrilling episode. Are you ready to dive into the supernatural? Subscribe now and join the pack. Chapter 20 to Swiping the Cards. Damon's P.O.V. Almost a week had gone by and nothing had changed. Survived each day of high school. Forced myself through the training sessions with Casey, usually starting with the two of us winding up into a heated argument that always led to flying fists and claws, then her disappearing towards the end to do God knows what with her friends, and repeating it all the next day for 7 straight days. Good morning. The announcements began over my head towards the beginning of first period. I'm so very pleased to start off today's announcements with the nominees for the first prom in 8 years. Our nominees for King and Queen of the Winter Prom by majority vote are Crystal Palmer, Liam Miller, David Calvin S., Sydney Sweeney, Chloe Newman, Damon Fallon, Just Anne Reid, and Casey Blazy. The pencil in my hand snapped as the words sunk into my brain, chilling me to the bone. Though I hated the idea, I was surprised I was nominated. But Casey, like life couldn't get any more complicated and twisted as it does. Hey, congrats man. Nick England smirked, clapping my shoulder. I glanced up at him and his cool, guy grin, Luke standing right behind him. Thanks, I muttered, trying to shake off the weird feeling, but clearly I was the only one who found it weird. Chloe and Sydney, both of them thrilled, were also gaping over Casey being Harmony. Like the sensitive human girls they were too scared Casey again, though they'd never admit it, but were talking amongst each other how it was even possible. Plus, besides maybe Liam, you don't have much of a competition. It's the elected queen we gotta worry about. Hopefully Crystal will be elected. Foxy but smart. She's got it all. Nick grinned, side glancing back towards Chloe and Sydney. Doesn't matter. I couldn't give a crap about this stupid dance anyway. Leaning back in my seat. I'm just in it for the dates. Girls will do anything for a date to the prom. Luke snickered, looking around the room for possible candidates. Right on. Man, Nick agreed, fighting Luke. But not only was it that Casey was nominated that bothered me, it was the fact that Justin was too. Everybody thinks they're a cute couple. People won't shut up about it, and it drove my wolf crazy. There was an even greater possibility that Justin and Casey would be elected together. Casey SP. I groaned, banging my head against the desk. Come on. I was that bad a person. What did I do to deserve this curse? Future queen in the house. Amber yelled, popping up beside me from out of nowhere. I growled in disgust, despising the title. I hated dancers enough, but queen of the prom, yeah, no thanks. No, I think Crystal is in chemistry now, I remarked, looking away with no interest whatsoever. Come on, seriously, Amber gaped. You're also going to be queen. The other nominees are total witches. True, but I don't want to be the stupid queen. I hate dances. Nevertheless, we've been through this. I rolled my eyes, my head resting on my arms which lied across the desk. Amber just smirked, her eyes beaming with more mischief than I was comfortable with. God, Amber, you know I hate it when you look like that. Her sly grin only widening. You could practically hear the gears working in her head. Don't fret, my little. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She smiled, patting my head and completely ignoring my lost and dazed face. I know exactly how to handle this. And with that, she waved her fingers at me before prancing back towards her seat on the other side of the class, not glancing back to witness my unsettled expression. I shrunk back in my seat as I silently ate my sandwich, trying to block out Mary and Abby's excited chatter about the dance and me being a nominee. I swear to God, if I hear my name and Queen again in one sentence, I'm going to freaking lose it. Hey, Casey. Maggie smiled as she sat down in the chair beside me, Danica taking the seat on the other side of me. Finally, some sane people. Sitting back up in my seat with a pleased smile. Oh, sorry. I meant Queen Casey. Danica snickered, Maggie not bothering an attempt to muffle hers. Jerk, I exclaimed, throwing the last bit of my sandwich at her. She just giggled, accompanied by Maggie, Mary, and Abby. Ollie, who sat quietly, was giggling as she brushed away the bits of ham that landed across the table. Whatever, you know you love us, Maggie chuckled, pulling out her own lunch. The table remained awkwardly silent for a few moments before Abby began getting a conversation started. So, are you guys nervous for the talent show? Mary and I definitely are. Glancing from Danica to me to Maggie, I guess. I mean, the talent show's this Friday, 2 days from now. I think we have the song down, but there are still the nerves. Danica responded quietly, Maggie nodding in agreement. 2 weeks total to get the entire song down and, in my opinion, I think we used that time pretty well. You guys are doing the dance, right? Maggie questioned. Abby and Mary nodded. You've each done dances for the talent show for a couple years now. Both of you are awesome. Maggie smiled in comfort. Mary sighed, her shoulders relaxing and Abby just smiling in thanks. We have tonight and tomorrow to practice. I'll see if I can get out of tutoring early tomorrow, I informed Maggie and Danica, using the word tutoring instead of training so I didn't get Abby and Mary curious. Coolio, Maggie said, in understanding. Damon's key. Ovi. My wolf pawed savagely at the inside of my chest the moment my eyes landed on Casey as she instructed again in front of the pups, her red commie tightly hugging her body and her sweat counts looking easily shreddable. I quickly fought my instincts and took my place in the front, feeling Casey's eyes burning through me as I opened my mouth to protest. No, attacking is much more important than dodging. It's the same thing as running away, I asserted, earning myself a growl from both Dan and Casey. In this case, dodging is more important and is the exact opposite of running, she breathed, more to me than the pups. If you go head-on into combat, you're easily going to get yourself injured or killed. When dodging, you can get some hits while avoiding their blows. That does nothing. If you go head-on, you get the satisfaction of actually inflicting damage, I argued. Yeah, damage to yourself, Casey downed, looking at me like I was a child with a wild imagination. That's freak and suicide. Bullshit, I spat, forgetting that kids were listening to everything we said. It's better than playing a game of cat and mouse. Prove it, she snarled, her eyes flickering viciously. Knowing she was just challenging me like the past several sessions, I gnawed as I lunged for her, my anger rising when my hands only net air, not flesh. I didn't even get to turn around before I was grabbed around the neck, Casey growling in my ear. Her hot breath and over my neck, arousing my wolf. I resisted the urge to claim her and unlocked her arm from my neck, pulling her in front of me. It was just a moment before my eyes locked with hers that I felt her knuckles connect with my face, a sharp pain tearing through my nose, the sour taste of blood hot on my lips. Not so tough now, are ya? Casey taunted, twisting her wrist from my grip and spinning on her heel a roundhouse kick, her foot digging into my chest. I stumbled back, trying to retrieve the air she knocked from my lungs. My rage beginning to boil. I lunged again, this time tackling the snarling girl to the ground. I gripped her upper arms, pinning her against the earth, but she didn't stay down for long. The next instant I felt her legs wrapped around my waist and with force pushed me to the ground. What the hell? I snarled under my breath, unable to wrap my mind around how it was possible for her to do that. Her small hands were then tightly wound around my neck, my back pressed against the ground as one knee ground firmly into my chest. "Come on," Casey scoffed. "You can't be that surprised by now." She grinned teasingly, not caring that I was able to grip her shoulders, trying to push her off, but her nails dug into my flesh. Not surprised, just turned on. A sly idea snaking into my mind. Her eyes widened for a moment, loosening her grip on my throat. Quickly, I pushed her down onto her back, my hands pinning her arms down, my legs on either side of her. Her eyes flickered black to grey, her lips slightly parted. "What's the matter?" To my aching extraordinaire, Madeline Noben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I whispered close to her ear, my lips against her skin. "You look a little pale." She shuddered beneath my weight. Her instincts warred against her behind her eyes, her irises flashing onyx black before slowly fading back to grey. Me," she stuttered, but you could easily tell she was trying to sound strong and in control. "You're either one panting like a dog." A smirk twitched on her lips, her eyes glinting mischievously. The pleasing control I had felt dissolved as she cocked her head to the side, the corners of her rose, petal lips tugging upward into a smug grin. Her eyes then flickered past me and instantly I felt someone grasping my shirt, tugging me off of Casey. "Seriously? You two were like freaking 4-year-olds constantly going at it," Dan snapped, holding a hand out to help Casey to her feet. She brushed the dirt and grass from her hair as she steadied herself, glancing around the field. "Where do the children go?" Clearly trying to change the subject, I sent them away. "They don't need to be seeing well," he exclaimed, motioning his hands towards us. I heard Casey sigh, knowing it was accompanied by an eye roll. If we just did things my way, we'd actually get something accomplished, not needing to be shamed by my beta. He narrowed his eyes at me as a scoff came from Casey's direction. "Please, if we did things your way, we'd have a bunch of injured kids on our hands," she sneered, throwing me an icy glare. A growl erupted from my chest in response. Dan just looked back and forth between us, his face blank. "I don't even see how it's possible." Dan shook his head, glancing back once more as he turned and headed towards the pack house, Casey lingering for a moment before storming off behind him. Chapter 23 Seductors Casey SP. "Elvie, what did you do? Drag your face through the dirt?" Maggie asked when I entered my room, my hair still knotted with grass and dirt stained on my face. Dan stomping in after me and slamming the door behind him. "Yeah, something like that," I chuckled dryly, wiping my forehead with the back of my hand, flipping my hair behind my shoulder. Danica and Amber fought amused smiles from creeping to their faces. I threw them each a cold glare, a low growl escaping my lips. "Damon," Dan growled as he grabbed Amber's water bottle from her hand and splashed half of it on his face, a quarter to my floor, and the rest in his mouth. "Hey," Amber hissed, swiping back her now empty water bottle and slapping Dan upside the head. "Meanie. Really, Meanie, that's the best you could do?" Dan cocked an eyebrow, a sly yet friendly grin snaking across his lips. Amber growled as she threw the empty bottle at him, turning her back to him. "Okay," Maggie dragged on, the three of us staring at Amber and Dan in curiosity. Moving on. "Look, guys, do you mind if we skip practice tonight? I stink and I swear there is something crawling through my hair." not necessarily exaggerating. Casey, the talent show is in 2 days. We can't afford to skip a single practice, Danica said, looking a little panicked. I groaned, feeling like my legs were about to buckle beneath me any second. Please. In dying, I complained overdramatically, sticking my bottom lip out in emphasis. We can practice extra long tomorrow, I pleaded, just wanting to take a shower and sleep. There are just too many complications in a single day, Maggie tried to convince me. Come on, Magdaless, Dan teased, giving her the puppy dog eyes, but knowing she despised the nickname. Our little Casey had a long day. Thank you. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Dan tipping his head in my direction before continuing to beg Maggie. Don't you bless me. Daniel. Maggie narrowed her eyes at the beta, making him take a cautious step back. Donny-licious. Dan turned to Danica, giving her his big, innocent eyes. Danica growled at the name, crossing her arms. Only if you never call me that again. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She negotiated, her eyes seeming to pierce Dan. Both he and I nodded hastily in agreement. There are no excuses tomorrow, or I will drag you by the hair and duct tape you to that chair. Got it? Danica threatened. I didn't hesitate another second before nodding again, too thankful for words. Thank you. Thank you. Dan, I grinned, tackling him with a hug that made him stagger back in surprise. No prob. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. No back off and hose down. You smell like Damon and dirt. He laughed, pushing me back and putting a hand over his nose just to tease me. I smiled as I ushered my friends out, wanting some freak in privacy. Who knew someone could get all excited about a simple bath? With a final sigh, I grabbed my wade into the bathroom, dimming the lights and turning on the faucet, filling the bathtub up with hot water, adding bubbles as well. I threw my robe over the sink, dropping my sweats to the floor, my commie and underwear joining it. I slowly slid into the bath, the warm water and bubbles caressing my skin delicately. I leaned back, resting my head on the back of the tub, the water pulsing gently above my shoulders and around my neck, twirling between my stiff fingers. Why couldn't the rest of my life be this relaxing? Damon's pee. Ovi. In only a pair of shorts, I collapsed onto my bed, throwing a pillow over my head. I hated these freaking training sessions. I had better things to do than to be training a bunch of pups, but I'd rather do it than Casey and her feminine skills. No matter how effective they appeared to be. She was still too sensitive and just couldn't see the entire picture. Alpha female my ass. There was a subtle knock at my door and I looked up just to see Crystal's smiling face in the doorway, her eyes twinkling mischievously. She silently slid into my room, biting her lip nervously. Can I help you with something? I asked, my eyebrows coming together as she slowly walked closer towards me, her hands held behind her back. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Yeah, she grinned, tucking a strand of dark brunette hair behind her ear. I raised an eyebrow, waiting for her to explain what she was doing in my room while I was half naked. And what would that be? I questioned, watching her ocean blue eyes scan my body seductively. Well, I heard that you're Ian Omni for prom king, she drawled, closing her lips as her eyes locked with mine, her deep blue irises seeming to drown me. And, well, I was wondering if you wanted to possibly go with me. Deep down my wolf howled no at the top of his lungs, but mine and KC's game could only go up from here if I said yes. Sure, I smoldered, watching her lips stretch into a pleased smile. Definitely, Crystal was the hottest werewolf in our pack, and if dating her didn't drive Casey insane, I'm not sure what will. Perfect, she purred, spinning on her heel and strutting out, winking as she disappeared out the doorway. However, the moment she left, a strong scent of ivy wafted into my room, making me shudder. Oh frick, I groaned, rolling onto my stomach and stuffing my face into my pillow, trying to get the scent out of my nose, but somehow, it was still able to taunt me. My wolf prowled behind my eyes, trying to force his way out and go hunt my mate down, make her realize who her mate really was. I caged my instincts in growling at the R-rated images in my head. God, what could Casey possibly be doing right now that made Wolf so aroused and hungry and that made her scent so strong? My mind spun crazily out of control, my wolf pawing viciously to get out. It took all my manpower just to keep him in. She just knew all the cards to play right before I could roll the dice. That girl was like a freak in Seductors. Chapter 24. Some hearts still be Casey SP. Ovi. I felt Justin's breath on the back of my neck before I felt his arms wrap around my waist, pressing my back against him. I smiled as I kicked my locker shut and forgot about a battle of my books before turning around so that I stood with the tall and handsome boy whom was well known as my boyfriend. Good morning, beautiful, he grinned, pecking my cheek with a quick kiss. I wound my arms around his waist, pulling him closer to me. Hey there, returning a simple kiss on the lips. It was the moment that I was pulling away that my muscles tensed, and his chuckle filled the hall, accompanied by others. I glanced past Justin to see Damon casually walking down the hall, and you wouldn't guess who was tangled in his arms. I guess Damon's dating Crystal Palmer now. That's not gonna last long, Justin scoffed, moving his arm from my waist to around my shoulders so that we could both see the center of attraction prowling down the halls. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. With her short skirts and disturbingly tight shirts, could have been with Chloe's gang if she wanted. But, unlike Chloe and her pack of diseased friends, Crystal actually had a brain, and she knew just how to use it. I held Justin closer to me as Damon came closer, my eyes narrowing on the girl wrapped in my mate's arms. Damon quickly noticed me staring and smirked in my direction, moving his hand from the small of her back to her butt. I growled, Damon's eyes scanning over Justin and me as he walked past, Crystal tossing her own fox-like glare in our direction. For her sake, it better not, I snarled under my breath, intended for only me to hear. What was that? Just unquestioned, staring down at me curiously. I smiled innocently up at him, batting my eyelashes a few times for emphasis. Oh, just that I feel bad for Crystal. I thought she was smarter than to have decided to go out with him. Hoping he would believe me and not press any farther. He chuckled in amusement, making me relax a bit. Same, they're probably only dating because they want to win. But, who knows? Releasing me from his grip and him from mine. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I'll see you later. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Raising his eyebrows before placing another kiss on my forehead. I nodded, turning back to my locker as he turned and started off towards his first period class. Taking in a deep breath, I spun on my heel and was about to hurry to my class when I noticed Amber and Doubt strolling down the hall. Now was as good a time as any to talk to them. I located the nearest escape and ran to my friends, ignoring their gasps of surprise as I grabbed them into the girls' locker room. Yo man, what up with this? Clearly, I'm a guy. Our kind is not appreciated in here, Dan exclaimed, trying to keep his eyes trained on me and not around the feminine high school room. Where's the fire? Girl, Amber questioned, completely ignoring Dan and setting me back on topic. You mean you haven't seen Damon and his new trophy? A little confused, yet slightly relieved. The slower the news spreads, the less people who LL mention it to me. Damon's dating Crystal, and I think it's only because he wants to bring the game up a notch. Well, what did you expect? I mean, it's Damon. Dan shrugged. Yes, thank you, Captain Obvious, Amber remarked, giving Dan a playful shove. I just barely caught the quietest per rupture from Dan, but he quickly tried to muffle it out with a cough. My eyebrows furrowed for a minute as I glanced between my two awkward, set friends before moving on, taking a mental note to ask them about that later. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilbert, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. It's ticking me off, but I couldn't care less. You know what I mean. I attempted to explain, the thought of my mate with another girl making my wolf pissed, but I shouldn't give a shat. Yeah, I guess, Amber said hesitantly. And knowing you, Crystal's not going to last long. She broke into a smirk. I moaned, trying to replace the smile that was ripping through my face at the thought. Now was not the time for jokes. Well, what do you want us to do? Dan raised his eyebrows. Staying on track. Can you please cover for me in training tonight? I pleaded, hoping I can avoid Damon while also keeping my promise to Danica and extending band practice. Yeah, sure, no problem, he replied. I sighed a quick appreciative thanks before glancing back at Amber's fidgeting hands and thought. Okay, great. Now that that's out of the way, let's move on to my next profound curiosity. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Noticing Dan's face instantly pale as his light-hearted smile slightly faltered. And what could that possibly be? Amber strained to sound spastic ally normal as she could. I raised my eyebrows, about to ask what's been going on between them when the second bell rang over our heads, making Amber and jump about 3 feet in the air. Whoops, that's the bell. Don't want to be late to first period. Dan almost yelped as he grinned back at me before practically running out of the room, Amber smiling as she tailed behind, leaving me in the awkward silence that followed. I called the loose football jersey over my head before granting access to my friends to enter my room. The door swung open and Danica bounded in, accompanied by Amber and Maggie. Last practice before the show, the last chance to perfect things, Danica stated. A hint of nervousness snaked around her voice. I grimaced as I got myself comfortable on my stool, fixing the drumsticks in my hands. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I was the starting beat, so whether or not we began smoothly rested on my hands. Taking a deep breath, I gently started the converse. Then Amber accompanied me, Maggie singing the opening lyrics. For a bunch of high school, somewhat average, group of girls, we rocked the song. Maggie just had the perfect voice for the notes, and Amber, Danica, and I had just enough experience to hit the right notes. The chorus came up and the three of us joined Maggie, our voices harmonizing into one. It was then my turn to sing the verse while continuing the beat, something I like to call bias multitasking. With a grin on my face, I let the lyrics roll off my tongue, thrilled to have all my feelings released. If this is what I felt then, I wondered what I'd be feeling for the talent show the next day. The rest of the song went smoothly, barely a hesitation and no noticeable screw-ups. If you asked me, the talent show would be no sweat. We went through the songs several more times, feeling confident about the talent show. Roughly 2 hours after we started, we carefully packed our instruments away so they'd be ready to take to school the next morning. See you tomorrow. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Maggie smiled as she closed the door behind her as they left. My muscles all tightened sore, screaming for a bath. I sprinted into the bathroom, not bothering to shut the door as I turned on the hot water, dropping my clothes to the floor and grabbing my robe, wrapping it tightly around me. A cold draft ran through my room, making me shiver, and it didn't take me long to realize that I had left one of my windows wide open. I hurried across the room and pulled the window shut just as my door suddenly flew open with a bang. I spun around to find Dan falling onto my bed, grabbing one of my pillows and holding it over his head. "Oh, Dan, of course you can just come on in and make yourself comfortable," I hissed sarcastically, feeling awkward that there was a male in my room while I stood there half-naked. "Thanks. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I knew you'd always be there for me," he murmured into the pillow, giving me a thumb up. I rolled my eyes, making sure my robe was securely tied around me. If you don't mind, I'd like to take my bath now," and I waved my hands towards him in a shooing motion, hoping HE to get out. "Oh no, please. I don't mind at all." He propped himself up on his arms as he grinned at me, a cheeky gleam in his eyes. I gave him a look as I grabbed one of the throw pillows from the chair and threw it at him, knocking him onto his back. "Casey, I need your help. To our agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." Wrapping his arms around the pillow and holding it like a plush teddy bear. I crossed my arms, realizing how serious, in a childish way, his voice was. I sat down on the bed beside him, clutching my robe so that it continued to cover my chest and crossing my legs so that I felt a little less exposed. "With what exactly?" I interrogated, looking him in the eyes. He held the pillow closer to him, almost hesitating. I'm almost positive that on the slight chance, just possibly, and I mean just possibly," he continued, fumbling through his words. "What is it, Dan?" I almost snapped, cutting him off in mid-mumble. He gulped before looking up carefully at me. "I think Amber's my mate," he nearly whispered, his voice so quiet. I carefully studied his face, expecting him to start cackling loudly, yelling, "I got you, or you should have seen your face any minute." But I don't think I've ever seen done that serious before. "How do you know?" "Well, whenever I touch her, my stomach gets all tingly, and the more I've been hanging out with her, I realize I can't even think the same about other girls. When you asked me a few minutes ago if I mind, I thought of Amber and started thinking about a whole bunch of things. Not PG things either." He swooned, his eyes sparkling with what I could only guess was lust. It was the same look Damon would get whenever I teased him. "I don't see why you need my help, though. Amber's a great girl, and to my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. You're a great guy. You both have spontaneous personalities and great senses of humor. What's the problem?" Not seeing anything wrong. How do I ask her? How do I tell her? He looked up at me, almost pleading for my advice. "Do you really want to be with her?" "More than anyone in the world, yes," he said confidently, continuing to look up at me with the same look. "Then go to her now. Tell her. If it's true, she'll feel the same." I smiled warmly, watching a small smile tug at the corner of his lips. He slowly sat up, placing the pillow to the side. "I will." "Thank you, Casey," he beamed, giving me a friendly hug and making me feel slightly uncomfortable. I promised not to hurt her, he whispered to me, quickly releasing me and running out of my room, leaving me with the sweetest thought. Still smiling, I got up from my bed and was about to close my door when the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, my wolf growing furious. I peeked out into the hallway, my wolf growling to see Crystal tightly wrapped in Damon's arms, their lips locked. I snarled, forcing my eyes away, and slammed the door behind me, sprinting into the bathroom, with both the image of Damon and Crystal and Dan's words still bouncing around my mind. Damon's POV, noticing Dan sitting on KC's bed, her half-naked beside him. It took every bit of self-control I had to keep my wolf tamed and from tearing down limb from limb. While my wolf screamed about another male lingering about my mate, I narrowed my eyes, unable to tear them away. I hated caring. She wasn't worth it. I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms as Dan wrapped his arms around KC, giving her a hug that pissed my wolf off. My teeth clenched tighter as she hugged back, a soft smile spreading across her magenta lips. Dan whispered something in her ear that made her eyes wide before he ran out, his eyes narrowing as he froze for a moment to glare at me, his eyes glancing up and down my body as if questioning what I was doing there. But instead of asking, he walked quickly down the hall to Amber's room, sliding in before closing the door behind him. My eyes still locked on the closed door. Crystal walked in front of my view, wearing the shortest skirt possible and a tiny tank top that really had no purpose at all. "Good evening, Mr. Alpha," she purred, standing barely 2 inches away from me. "Hey, Crystal," I smoldered, my eyes flashing quickly towards KC's room just in time to see her heading towards the door, her slim, silk robe calling out to me. My wolf was burrowing through my chest. Holding him off was almost painful. Crystal's voice broke through my mind again, but I couldn't catch a word she was saying. I quickly pulled her to me and crashed my lips against hers, placing my hands on her ass when I heard KC's door creak. I felt her eyes targeting daggers at me as I kept my lips glued to Crystal's, her lips passionately caressing mine. It almost made my wolf sick to see so much hate and disgust in KC's eyes while I made out with another female who was my mate. I glanced up at her without moving my lips from Crystal's just as Casey slammed her door, barely making Crystal flinch. She only deepened the kiss as she tried slipping her hand down my pants, but I quickly pulled back. "I'll see you tomorrow," I stated as coolly as I could while I tried shaking off her taken aback face. She smiled awkwardly as I slipped back into my room, closing the door behind me. I ran a hand through my hair tiredly, KC's pissed, still racking at my brain. But I'd rather be thinking about that than Casey wearing that tightrobe. It was eating at me more than her anger. Screaming broke through my mind, then moaning, followed by banging. Immediately, I recognized it as Amber's and knew it was screams of pain. Sounds like Dan finally found his mate. This hallway was not going to be silent anymore, I could already tell. A lot of moaning echoed, making the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end, Casey only becoming more popular in my mind. Damn, I needed to get out of there. I stormed over to the balcony, climbing over the railing and jumping, shifting as I dropped 3 stories, landing hard on my paws and taking off towards the woods. Rogues, anywhere was better than that pack house. Twigs snapped under my paws as I pushed myself farther into the darkening forest, jumping over logs and rocks. The moon's rays illuminated the forest floor through the haunting bare tree branches and made them look like crippled arms reaching out for me. Ahead of me, the trees spread apart into a clearing, the air illuminated silver from the moon's glow. I stopped in the center, the tall grass brushing against my ankles softly. I dropped to my haunches before rolling onto my side, nuzzling my muzzle into the grass. The faint smell of rogue lingered around, my ears pricking to try and hear anything in the distance, but it was silent except for the low hum of crickets. My first instinct was to track down the invader who dared step into my territory, but I remained still against the earth. If they were wise, they would have known not to come any farther into my territory. Slowly I closed my eyes, curling up in the grass and tucking my tail under my head. Maybe just a night away would clear my mind of that freaking mistake that lives across the hall from me. Even if it means spending my night with the rogues nearby. Chapter 25. Part of me, KCSP. OV. Make way for the lovebirds. I grinned, crossing my arms as Dan and Amber made a failed attempt to sneak out of Amber's room. Let's just say, when they're making plans secretly, they're not great at whispering. Danica and Maggie threw the rice over them as their faces began turning bright red, Amber almost hiding behind Dan with their fingers tightly wound together. "Oh, that is too cute," Danica gaped, pulling out her camera and snapping several pictures of the new beta couple. "Now that is one badass hickey." "Amber," Maggie teased, pointing to the crook of Amber's neck. "Oh, shut up." Amber blushed, fixing her jacket over the mark and had imprinted on her shoulder. Dan rolled his eyes at us, wrapping his arm around Amber's shoulder and holding her close to him. "Come on, guys. Back off," giving me a gentle shove. Of course he would know I was the one in charge of this. Damn, he knew me way too well. "Hey, you guys weren't exactly quiet last night. Don't tell us to back off when you two are making quite a lot of noise." Watching both faces turn bright rose red. Amber's face was about as red as her hair. Touchdown stuttered, his jaw tightening as he narrowed his eyes at me, however in his friendly manner. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilbe, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Mrs. Beta, are you ready for the talent show today?" Raising my eyebrows, but Dan just rolled his eyes again at the nickname. "I swear to God. Casey, shut up. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." Unable to hide her nervous smile. "Yeah, I got my guitar packed and ready. I'll meet you guys in the auditorium. Dan's driving me to school this morning." Glancing up at Dan shyly before pulling him past us, running down the stairs. "Oh, how cute." Maggie smiled. "They think they can get away from this," she added, tossing the bag of rice into Amber's room. Danica sighed, clearly agreeing as she threw the other bag in there before closing the door. "Just adorable," she smirked, picking up her keyboard case and hitching the strap over her shoulder. I had packed my drums in the back of Maggie's Jeep earlier that morning so I wouldn't have to be carrying the load now. "Let's go rock Ashington," Maggie stated, flipping on a pair of radiator shades Cooley Horatio Kane from CSI Miami style. I shook my head, unable to hide my amused grin as she strutted down the hall with one hand dug into her pocket and the other gripping her bag that was thrown over her shoulder. Way to be normal. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." Danica called. "Never said I was," Maggie yelled back. I chuckled, exchanging an amused look with Danica before following Maggie towards her Jeep in the garage. "So, speaking of her Horatio Kane, how's Justin?" Danica interrogated as we hopped into the car, Maggie starting up the engine. "What does that have to do with her Horatio Kane?" I questioned, giving Danica an old before I slipped on my own radiator shades. "I don't know. Just answer the dang question, woman," Maggie snapped, pulling out onto the road. "Fine. The perfect boyfriend. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilbe, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm," I informed with a bit of annoyance. It got me thinking about how ussid he was compared to Damon, which got me thinking about Damon, which got me thinking about last night. That son of a— "Oh really?" Danica interrupted my thoughts. "Good thing she did." My claws were beginning to tear into the seat. Are you going to ask him to the dance? Both girls leaned in for the answer, waiting patiently for the words to slip from my lips. Yes, I mumbled, staring out the window. I'm sorry. What was that? Danica pushed, leaning in, her hand held to her ear. Yes, I said more clearly, watching pleased smiles spread across their faces. Good. The queen needs her king. Danica chuckled, fiving Maggie just to annoy me. Oh my god, guys. Shut the hell up. I begged, hiding my face in my hands. There was no way I was going to hate that title. Okay, fine, but you guys are going to win, Maggie sang as she pulled the car into the school parking lot. Whatever, I replied, jumping out before the car even came to a full rest. I grabbed a couple parts of my drums from the back and began heading towards the school doors with Maggie and Danica still collecting their instruments behind me. Where do you guys think Amber and Dan ran off to? I called back to them as they caught up with me. Probably making out in the bathroom. Maggie snickered. Well, Danica paused. That's cute in a weird overpossessive way, I guess. Oh, let them be. I'm sure you guys will be the same when you guys find your mates. I protected, knowing the probable truth. Well, let's see who we end up with then. Well, talk, Maggie said, giving me a look that clearly suggested Damon and I. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I'm done saying shut up. I'm just going to ignore you now. I zipped my lips, pretending to lock them and throw away the key. Come on. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Danica laughed. I just shook my head and shrugged, motioning to my closed lips. They just shook their heads and laughed as we continued our way to the auditorium and through the crowded hallways. I ruffled my hair around my shoulders, counting my lips in the mirror to assess myself one last time before the talent show. Maggie was applying a layer of a hot pink lipstick to her lips on my right, Danica and themselves to my left. In a pair of skinny black jeans, a crimson red V-neck top, and a black leather studded vest, I cowed and disagreed that I looked hot. My ruby red lipstick was accentuated by my red attire and gave me the air of burning coal. Looking hot. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Danica grinned as I stood back and deemed myself ready. Look who's talking. You look like you're ready to strut down the runway, I complimented, glancing down at her slim, dark green, V-neck top and dark skinny jeans that were tucked into a pair of brown leather Texan boots. Hopefully we'll sound as good as we look, Amber scoffed as she leaned against the sink to look at us, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Her red hair was curled in ringlets and let loose around her shoulders and down her back. She righted the top of her blue dress so that it didn't hang too low, making the statement she was off the market. Please, we're going to own that stage. Maggie grinned with confidence. Let's just hope you're right. Mags. Danica sighed as we filed out of the girls' bathroom and headed down the empty halls towards the auditorium. We had 2 minutes before the announcements were going to be made to have the students head to the theater. Just out of curiosity, has anyone seen Damon today? Maggie suddenly asked as we entered backstage with the rest of the other performers. Why are you so curious? I snapped, narrowing my eyes at her. She jumped back as if startled and Danica and Amber glanced between us. I just haven't seen him around all day and usually he'd be storming down the halls at some point after seeing you, she said with a small shrug. I stared at her a moment more before considering what she said and realized she was right. Since last night, I haven't seen the pain in their ass around, and now that Maggie had mentioned it, it didn't seem right to me. By now, Achidi had said some snide remark to get me ticked off, and he hadn't even shown his face in attempt to. Who knows? I said instead. Maybe he crawled back to the hell he came from. I hissed before grabbing my drumsticks from the velvet bag that hung around the cymbals. Now wouldn't that be something? Amber said as she slung her bass strap over her shoulder. Attention teachers, please escort your classes to the auditorium now for the talent show. Everyone please report to the auditorium now for the talent show. Thank you. My mother's voice echoed to the speaker. Immediately after, you could hear the students filing into the hallway, a couple already appearing at the door. Oh, I almost forgot. I gasped just as the first wave of kids came into the auditorium. I promised Justin I'd meet him by his locker before the show for a good luck kiss, I said with an almost girlish and geeky smile on my lips. Oh wow, that's so cute to the point it's comical, Maggie cooed, making me slap her shoulder. Whatever, they'll be back in like 2 minutes, I said before running off stage and through the back way into the hallway. Puffing out my chest, I prowled down the corridor, biting my lip nervously. Just thinking about the boy got me all hot and bothered. Unfortunately, I would literally slaughter him in bed. Just the fact that I was an over-possessive and instinctuant werewolf and he was all man meant he would be too weak for werewolf play. However, it didn't mean that I couldn't have mad make-out sessions with him. I turned the corner to his locker when I froze, feeling my world beginning to crash around me. My fist clenched tightly by my sides as my eyes scanned across the couple tangled in each other against the wall of lockers, lips passionately locked together. Justin had his arms tightly around a popular girl named Lexi, his past girlfriend. I felt my fangs elongate as a growl ruptured from the emptiness of my chest, the place my heart was moments ago. Justin must have heard it, because he quickly pulled away from Lexi to look up at me, his eyes wide and fearful. Casey, he muttered nervously. You know Lexi, right? Wiping the smudged lip gloss from his lips. I narrowed my eyes on him, not allowing my hurt feelings make an appearance for him. How could you? I snarled, beginning to storm towards him, my fingers still clenched tightly by my sides. I thought I could trust you, and you cheat, like some player. I didn't even give him a second to spit his explanation out before I sent my fist sailing across his face, completely forgetting my abnormal werewolf strength. He stumbled back, his hands held over his noses, probably broken. I don't even want to hear my name come out of your mouth ever again, I reviled, spinning on my heel after throwing Lexi a spiteful glare and headed right back towards the stage. The backstage area was just starting to get crowded with anxious performers when I entered, the auditorium packed. I headed straight towards my girls set up, ignoring the curious glares I got from my friends. Do you guys mind if we change up the song a bit? Watching them exchange a glance with each other before leaning in to hear. The lights went out and we quickly set up on stage, but I was at the microphone and Maggie sat behind the drums, a guitar in my grip. We've been practicing this song so much that each of us pretty much knew each other's part. The spotlights rose up and I stared out at the audience, pleased to see my other group of friends in the front row, and even happier to see Damon and Crystal sitting towards the back, Damon's eyes intently fixed on me. I grinned, Maggie starting the beat. Days like this I want to drive away. Pack my bags and watch your shadow fade. You chewed me up and spit me out like I was poison in your mouth. You took my life. You drained me down, but that was then, and this is now look at me. This is the part of me that you're never gonna ever take away from me, no. The girls picked up the chorus, our voices harmonizing. At the moment, I couldn't exactly tell who this song was for specifically, just Anna or Damon. There are just too many jackasses in this little life of mine. I just want to throw my phone away. Find out who is really there for me or ripped me off your love was cheap. It was always tearing at the seams I fell deep. But you let me down, But that was then and this is now look at me. There was yelling in the audience and I just knew it was our friends cheering us on. I belted out the verses, feeling all the anger and aggression lifting from my shoulders as I sang out both Damon's and Justin's pressures and attacks on me. For a sudden change, however, Maggie was mastering the drums like a pro. Just as great as Amber was on the bass and Danica board. And you'll say I was too bad on the guitar. Not great, but not awful if I did say so myself. Hopefully, however, a song Damon would get stuck in that pretty little head of his. Chapter 26 Girls Night Casey's P. Ove Issa, that snide little turd really cheated on you. Danica gaped, the four of us sitting in a circle on my bed. I nodded with a roll of my eyes, ashamed that I had actually fallen for that two-timing player. Now if it's low, even for Justin, Maggie stated. I nodded, holding my bag of Doritos closer to me and stuffing a handful into my mouth. She reached for the bag and I growled at her hand, pulling the bag closer to me. Casey, just give me one, Maggie pleaded as she tried to reach for it again, but I snarled at her extended hand. No, I pouted, pouring more into my mouth. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. It's a family-size bag. I just want one, she exclaimed, pointing towards the large yellow and blue bold words that exclaimed fan it. Well, I'm a one-person family, I asked, chomping down on another handful of the cheesy snack. Maggie was about to return sauce and keep her title as the sauce master, but Amber quickly cut in. You know what? A sly smile spreading across her lips that made me fidget nervously on my spot. I hated it when she got that mischievous look in her eye. A wise word from an expert: never trust a girl who looks like she's planning your death. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilbe, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. If you're married to them, what? Danica mumbled cautiously, almost fearful what crazy idea might spill out of Amber's mouth next. We should have a girls' redemption night, she smirked, sitting back with her arms crossed as though she was pleased with her idea and was waiting for our responses. A what night? Maggie drawled, and Danica's expression the same lost look as Maggie's. I just sat there, continuing to munch on my nacho cheese Doritos. A girls' redemption night. Really? It's just a girls' night with horror movies and weird hot guys into the mix. Also kind of like a bachelorette party, I guess, she informed with a smirk on her face the entire time. Sounds like fun, Maggie beamed, running a hand through her already ruffled hair. In game, except there are really not a lot of hot guys in our age group to hang with, Danica pointed out, Maggie's shoulder slumping in the same realization. Well, I have done, Amber swooned, biting her lip as she twisted a finger around a lock of hair. God knows what that girl was thinking about then. I really didn't need to know. Then there are the college boys hanging around and probably bored out of their minds on this Friday night. Nice. Maggie cheered, putting her hands up in the air with a little cheer while Danica clapped quietly. Why, Whittle Casey, you've been quiet over there. Amber talked to me like I was baby while using a silly voice. I narrowed my eyes at her, but bit back the snide remarks filling my head and instead stuffed another chip into my mouth. What do you think? Plus, Damon's probably stalking about, so this can be the perfect time to strike the jealousy card. Maggie raised her eyebrow, and I considered how true her point was. I'm in, I grinned, finishing up the bag before balling it up and tossed the room into the basket. The three of us changed into our pajamas and met outside my room. I wanted to make sure I struck a chord with Damon, so I wore short black pajama shorts and a slim blue varsity tee, my hair held back in a ponytail. You know, since I moved in, I don't think I have ever once hung out in the living room, let alone get a good look at it. I said as we headed down the flights of stairs. Of course Dan and Cumbers owned out and completely tuned into each other, probably using the pack link to talk dirty to each other. That wouldn't surprise me, Danica scoffed. Usually the college kids lounge around in there instead of in their rooms. It's a thing. I don't ask. Whatever. Tonight we're going to take over and they can enjoy an ice horror movie with us. I prompted slyly as we walked into the living room. I don't know if it was a coincidence or if it was our lucky day, but there were about 5 hot senior boys hanging in the living room, staring blankly at the TV. Hey, Taylor. Dan nodded towards one of the boys before I could open my mouth to say something. Sup, Dan? He nodded back, his eyes then falling on me. Who are your friends there? He then asked, his friends looking over with interest. Oh, this is Maggie, Danica, Casey, and my girl, Amber, he introduced, heading towards the couch, leaving a space open between him and Taylor. Mentally calling dibs, I casually walked over and sat down between them. Hey, he smiled warmly down at me. The name's Taylor. That's Jake, Carlos, James, and Logan. He pointed and named each of his friends, each of them giving a slight wave or nod. So Taylor, you guys watching anything or do you mind if we turn on a horror movie? Dan questioned, but Taylor barely took his eyes off me as he replied. Please, go ahead, smiling down at me, luring him in. Dayman can be the sleazy skirt chaser he is, but truth is, I know just how to lure and trap prey myself just as easily as he can. Dan stood up and I watched him slip Horror Story into the DVR, finding the remote and pressing play before turning the lights off. I quickly took a glance around the room and smiled when I saw Danica whispering quietly to James, using her hands to try and explain something that clearly interested James. Maggie was sitting closely to Logan, a punk-looking kid in a My Chemical Romance t-shirt. If you asked me, he was like the guy version of Maggie, on the outside anyway. In going to grab some snacks, I informed as I got up and hurried into the kitchen, feeling Taylor's eyes on my butt as I left. I rolled my eyes. Boys, I thought humorously to myself. In the kitchen I hunted down a bag of popcorn, a couple bags of chips, candy, and bottles of assorted drinks. While the popcorn popped in the microwave, I hopped up onto the counter, staring at the numbers counting down and waited for the snack to finish its roasting. So, Casey, interesting song in the talent show today. I turned to see Crystal leaning in the doorway, looking as sly and slutty as ever. She smirked mischievously at me, slowly prowling forward with her arms crossed across her chest. Thanks, I muttered, turning my back to her. She scoffed, making me roll my eyes at her annoying presence. You know, as I sat next to Damon, watching your performance intently with my arms wrapped around him, I couldn't help but notice how Damon reacted when you walked on in that cute little outfit of yours, she said as she continued advancing towards me, a crude grin pulling at her lips. And what exactly did you notice? To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I played along, hoping that she would just spit out whatever and get the hell away from me. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Where to begin? She dragged. Maybe the way his breath hitched, or how he began to sweat. She raised her eyebrow questionably at me as I narrowed my eyes at her, wondering what exactly she was inferring. Now I know I easily get that reaction from boys, but not nearly as intense, which could only mean one thing. She chuckled. And what could that be? Bored with this discussion, that you and Mr. Alpha Boy are mates, she sang, pleased at her little observation. Oh yay, someone give the girl a gold star. I cheered sarcastically. Great job putting that cute little hypothesis together, but there's just one little quirk to it. Jumping off the counter and turning to face her. I don't have a mate. Please, Casey, like him going to fall for that, she sneered, moving her hands defensively to her hips. I can see it in his eyes how hard he hides it whenever you're around. Eyes are the windows to the souls and all that shit. She laughed, amused as she plucked an M&M from one of the bags and popped it into her mouth. Ever heard of hormones? Boys have them too, I argued carelessly. They kick off every time they set their eyes on any girl with a lot of luggage. I grimaced, glad to hear the microwave go off, then quickly swiped away the bag. Yeah, KC, I'm well aware of those, Crystal mused. But this was something different. Don't mistake me for a fool, Bearsy, because I'm not. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience and enthusiasm. Glaring fiercely at me. I rolled my eyes again, not in the mood to be listening to her obnoxious rambling right now. You a fool? Never crossed my mind. I bit, pouring the popcorn into a large bowl. Whatever. My point is, if you and Dame aren't mates, I hope you don't mind if I call dibs, she gleamed with an air of taunt. Unprepared to tame the beast in him, she licked her lips and I cowled and hid the look of disgust that forced its way to my face. Well, have fun with that, I replied infuriately, though my wolf growled at me for practically granting another female access to my mate. Screw that, let her have him. They were more of a probable couple anyway. Crystal smiled at me, with anything but kindness in her eyes, and walked back out of the room to wherever the hell crystals go. With a sigh of disgust and an involuntary shudder, I grabbed the food and headed back into the living room, the movie already 5 minutes in. There you are, Taylor grinned. Thought you were going to miss it. He grabbed the popcorn from my full hands as I tossed the bags of candy to Maggie, Danica, Jake, Carlos and Dan before falling back into my seat beside Taylor. Nope, the popcorn just took longer to pop than I thought. I lied before smiling up at him, taking notice that he had his arms spread out on the back of the chair behind me, clearly comfortable. I leaned back as the movie continued on, everyone digging into their snacks, and I felt Tyler's arm gently rest itself around my shoulders, pulling me slightly towards him. I let a purr echo from my throat, letting him think I enjoyed it. I sneaked a glance towards Amber and Dan and felt the hint of jealousy that tore through me at the sight of them in each other's embrace, their lips caressing each other's. I quickly turned my attention back to the movie and inched closer to Taylor, resting my head against his shoulder, earning myself a small pleased sound from him too. Oh, get a room, Fritz laughed from the chair over, punching his friend in the shoulder. His face turned slightly red, but he brushed his friend off and pretended to return his attention back to the TV, when really, half of it was on me. What are you guys watching? Damon's low voice asked. I glanced around Dan and Amber to see the tall figure standing in the doorway, his muscled arms crossed across his chest. Horror story, Dan replied carelessly, turning away from Amber just long enough to respond. I rolled my eyes, pressing myself closer to Taylor, knowing how much it was probably pissing him off at the moment. I could have sworn I heard a furious growl coming from his direction. Sorry, you can't join, Maggie said almost fiercely, sparing him a hateful glare. Yeah, we're having a girls' night, Danica added sternly, James almost giving her a weird look, but she held her finger up to his lips, making him chuckle before gliding his arms around her waist. Oh, Ree, he smirked comically. Then who are these guys? He pointed to the college boys around the room, purposely skipping past Dan. Our guy friends, I hissed with a sly grin, catching that possessive glint in Damon's dark eyes. Now, shoo! You're heroing the movie. I gave him an innocent look before pretending to look re-interested in the movie. Fine then. The fiend dies at the end, he said before quickly walking out. Maggie and I growling after him. Yeah, I yelled at him, knowing he'd ignore me anyway. Don't you just love him? I asked the guys sarcastically, everyone chuckling quietly so that the alpha himself wouldn't hear. Don't get left behind in the battle for the throne. Subscribe for the next chapter.